How will history view MS Dhoni? How will he be seen in years to come?
I think he'll be remembered as the man who came into bat number 9 in an IPL chase recently. He'll be remembered as a great captain. I think he'll be remembered as a very important person in the history of white ball cricket. Like, you know, that next evolution beyond someone like Michael Bevan and, you know, the great chaser and everything else. And I think he's got a really important... I think a lot of what's happening in Indian cricket now comes from his professionalism, his pragmatism, his ability to handle pressure and everything else. But as a tactician is probably... As a winner or a tactician is probably how he's remembered, right?
Legacy. There's not many players that you can say in the history of the game that leave with a legacy, and he definitely is. I think, you know, from chaos might not be the right word for Indian cricket, but he respects the game. He has a real respect for the game, and he has a calmness. And it is chaos. There is chaos in Indian cricket, but he had a calmness about the way he went about captaincy, wicket keeping. He looks quite a studious guy. And the other thing I'd say about him, he looked to have a real steel about him. And we would admire him as a cricketer, and I'm sure you wouldn't get many people, if any, who would have a wrong word against him. So he had great respect for the game.
He's also got the great camera moment, right, of hitting the 6 to win a World Cup.
Absolutely.
Like, you know, that
He's
helps.
got the iconic moment.
He's got his own shot
when
as
you
well.
think of... He has got his own shot.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? Like, and then you put in all the Chennai stuff. Who knows how important the IPL will be in 20 or 30 years' time, right? Like, he's already cemented his IPL legacy by winning a bunch of titles there too.
Talk to me about the art of the chase then, because that's one thing that you'll always think of MS Dhoni. You know, we saw there was comparisons. Hardik Pandya was playing against England recently, and he came in and he batted exactly like MS Dhoni used to for that first 10, 20 deliveries, and then got out. Whereas MS Dhoni would do the difficult thing. He'd bat like that, and then just when you think he's leaving it a bit late here, he's won the game with, you know, 6 balls to go or something. What was it about him that when it comes to chasing down totals just seemed to elevate, almost turned it into an art form?
Yeah, I think he was probably the first player to work out that there are this many balls left and I need this many boundaries, right? So I think before that, like if you go back to Michael Bevan did it in a very different way, right? Michael Bevan would be like, I can take it down to the last over, I can get this many runs in the last over, and I can hit my boundaries here. Whereas I think Dhoni was a little bit more like, okay, so we need 40 runs off 20 balls, and a normal player will be like, 40 runs off 20 balls, and he's like, actually what we need here is 8 boundaries with, you know, as long as a couple of them are sixes, right? So it's a very different way, and that's how modern cricketers think about it. The other thing, though, is some of the best chasers, and I think there's a difference between a chaser and a finisher. I think Chris Gayle is one of the best chasers we've ever seen. It's just that he finished the chase in like the 14th over and it didn't matter, right? Yeah. And you see Virat Kohli.
And he was another one who set himself up as well, wouldn't he? He wouldn't necessarily go too hard at the start.
No, exactly.
And you'd think, oh, he's having an off day today, and then...
So I think Gayle and Kohli are chasers, and then what Bevan and Dhoni are finishers, and they get right to the end and they take it there, but they've got their own algorithmic understanding of where the scoreboard is at all time and exactly where they need to go to get the runs.
And a mental strength to do all that. You know,
you're putting yourself under pressure.
You're putting yourself under pressure, and you've got to have a calculation. And whereas in the past, particularly in white ball cricket, is get your 1s and 2s. And I'm exactly with you. How many boundaries?
Yeah.
Your boundaries puts the fielding side under pressure. You get a boundary off the first ball of an over, they're under more pressure because the fielding side, because of the fielding restrictions, they're always one fielder short. And the great players will exploit that. They'll know where that gap is. They'll know where the potential is. It puts immense pressure on the guy who's bowling it to have a Dhoni at that end, knowing that he is so calculated in how he's going to finish this game. How he's going to set it up, and he puts building blocks in. But I'm with Jarrod. It used to be, get your 1s, get your 2s, rotate the strike, get your boundaries.
He was also, he wasn't afraid to tap into that. He was a player of his time, right? He was the captain as India continues to go through huge changes economically and politically. And he actually tapped into that nationalistic identity, didn't he? I think he had the branding on his gloves.
He had the army gloves, didn't he, for a little while.
So he also tapped into that kind of nationalistic.
And I think, doesn't he have like some sort of security detail that is former army people as well? Like, and didn't he even do some sort of thing where he jumped out of a plane or something?
No, I think he had a day off. And
he went on manoeuvres, didn't he?
That's what it was.
Yeah,
it was manoeuvres. I knew he did something.
He was, like basically went to a gun range. And
but if you look at him compared to Kohli is very much a brand, right? And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, Kohli has worked out that this is going to change his life and his family's life, forever.
He's also interested in that.
And he loves all that sort of stuff. And Kohli's the sort of person, if he loves something, he throws himself into it. Dhoni, you just feel like he's just a guy who does stuff that he really likes. And he likes guns and the army, and so he gets involved with guns and the army, right? You know, one of my favorite stories, I forget the name of the game. I always forget this, but there are these, Bumble's going to be completely lost at this. There are these online computer games, Bumble, that you play, and they just roll over all the time, right? And so you build an army or whatever, and you build a fort, and then you have to protect it. And MS Dhoni got absolutely obsessed with these games. But the problem is someone worked out that he was either a massive cricket fan or actually MS Dhoni. And every time he was playing in a game, they would attack his castle or his fort. And MS Dhoni was so upset by this that he hired someone to defend his fort, right? When he wasn't there. But it gets better. He didn't hire someone to go and attack for him. Just defend, just keep it here. I will come back and play the game. Your job is to make sure that I don't lose my weapons or my livestock or whatever. I don't know how that game works, but that's the sort of guy he is, right? Like, that's a pretty nerdy thing to do, you know. And you see him around. We've probably all seen him when India's touring. Like, you know, you see the entourages of the Indian group. But you see Dhoni in just like board shorts walking into a chicken shop sometimes, right? Like in Birmingham or Manchester, right? Like, he's so different than the other stars of Indian cricket.
Well, if you were to mention him or put him up there with the other stars of Indian cricket, in the history of Indian cricket, he would be up there. He'd be in the top 5, you'd say, in terms of the most iconic, in terms of most recognisable, in terms of the changes and the success that he had. You'd have to mention him alongside those other greats.
Yeah, and a real influencer, you know, going to Shastri and Gavaskar and Kohli and Tendulkar.
Kapil Dev.
And Kapil Dev. He's absolutely right up there. And then, you've got Ganguly and Laxman, you know, cricket is the religion. It is. It's in India, you talk about cricket, and the cricketers are right up there. Dhoni is a fabulous player.
It's also like he's a proper outskirts guy, right? Like, Kohli's from Delhi, you know, Rohit's Mumbai now, but, you know, from Mumbai and everything. And, you know, Sachin was obviously there, and you had Jarrod from, Bengaluru. Have you been to Ranchi? Like, it's a long way from everything. Have you ever even been to Ranchi?
No, I haven't.
Look, this is a man who's been to India probably 25 times. He's never been to Ranchi. Like, it's not a center of anything. When you go there, it's not like many other places in India that I've even been to. Like, it feels like a separate place again. So to come from that kind of area and build it up the way that he has, like, they have international games now. Like, you know, he's literally brought international cricket to his hometown. For me, that's just a massive achievement for someone like him in a country where, you know, we talk about India, but most of the time we really mean Chennai, you know, Bengaluru, Delhi, Mumbai, right? Because there's so many people in those places that if those 4 cities got together, they'd still probably be one of the best teams in the world.
You say that there's very little bad said against MS Dhoni. Do you think that he will or is linked, not in terms of doing anything wrong himself, but he was a captain of Chennai Super Kings when they were banned from the IPL for 2 years for links to match fixing, essentially. He wasn't banned. He went and played for somebody else for a couple of years, was successful and came back again. But do you think being part of that setup will at least take a little bit of the luster away, or do you think that's kind of brushed to one side?
Wasam Akram was mentioned in the Kayam report, right?
Yeah.
And I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I think it was Kayam, wasn't it? And now it's not really part of his legacy. I'm not saying it's not mentioned anymore, but Wasam Akram's still seen as a legend, isn't he?
Yeah.
And so it would be different if he was Mohamed Azharuddin or Hansi Cronje or someone like that, because there's not really much, like even in Mohamed Azharuddin's case, I don't think he was ever suspended for match fixing, was he? But there was so much said about it that I don't think you can even think about Mohamed Azharuddin now without the words sort of coming in. Whereas I think with MS Dhoni, you'd be like, look, he was a major part of that franchise, and that franchise was done for being involved with fixing directly. So there might be a small cloud, and it will be mentioned, but I think it'll be more in the Wasem Akram level than it will be in, some of those other players who are really, it's hard to think about Hansi Cronje and not think about match fixing, isn't it? Right? MS Dhoni is not even within a mile of that.
No, and Hansi Cronje was found guilty.
That's what I mean.
In the King's report, was it?
But there's a couple of people not found guilty who are still really linked to it. And I think that's what I mean. Then you sort of have the whole other side of things, that sort of, Wasem Akram and other players who were mentioned in those sorts of reports who never ended up getting it. And people might murmur behind the curtain a little bit. But I don't know. Chennai won a lot, to be fair, as well, which also helps, doesn't it? Like if you're winning that many trophies, obviously they were involved because they were suspended, but it's a bit different, maybe.
He had that impassivity, didn't he? That kind of unscrupulous kind of whatever the game situation. But Owen Morgan was England's version, wasn't it? The England cricket team. Yeah. Whatever was happening on the field, whatever the state of the game.
It's just a calmness. You've got to stay calm.
But you would have played with a lot of players who had that face on, right?
Yeah.
What was going on underneath? Were they that calm? Or was it just a mask? Do you think he really was that calm?
I do, yeah. I think you've got to keep your beats down. You've got to keep your heartbeat down. And, that's a modern way of doing, which they talk about. Keep your heartbeat down. And so you've got to stay quite relaxed. You've got to go to work.
Yeah.
It's what they do for a living. And so you've got to have a calmness. You've got to have a method. You can twist this all the way around to England the way that they play now. You've got to have a calmness, which we at the minute don't have.
Do you think he was that calm?
I do, yeah.
So, remember that famous Kevin Peterson innings at the Oval? And I watched that, and I came away from that, and that was one of the most astonishing things I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And I'd never really, I know both of them was probably the last batter to really adopt that kind of, kind of manner at the crease. I remember watching KP thinking, blimey, I can't imagine an England-born and raised player playing like that.
I'll give you one. And he used to, he didn't say much, said very, very little. Graham thought, I'm in a bubble. When I'm out there in the middle, I'm in the zone, I'm in a bubble. He said very little in changing rooms, but he was such a brave player, a wonderful player, and he had that calmness. He had a real calmness about him at the crease, steely. A poker face, never changed his expression.
And then, as you say, whatever you say about MS Dhoni, and the majority of it is overwhelmingly good, he will always have that image, won't he?
Yeah. If you're a cricket fan, he's probably, you talk about the calmness, it's almost, you can either have him as a steely tactician, or I always say he's the greatest pragmatist in cricket. Like, there was the games where I was just like, he's decided they can't chase this, so he's just not going to worry about it, right? Like, and that sounds bad, but the amount of times he, as you said before, would get too slow and would get there in the end. But I think as a casual person, and his legacy is probably hitting that six, right? That, I know they haven't quite moved as quickly as we thought they would with an Indian team, but that's kind of the 2011 onwards looks like it's the Indian generation, doesn't it? Right? That's the moment. 2011 might be their 87 World Cup with the Australians, where it hadn't quite come together, but it had come together enough. And then over the next generation, all the kids who come into the team now would have watched that image, right? Like that's what they would have come up watching. And so it means a lot to them.